Hello, and welcome to Talk This Way. I'm Marcia Martin, and in today's episode, we're diving into the core of what it means to achieve and communicate success. My journey has been a tapestry of diverse experiences, from being an executive in transformative movements like EST, now known as the Landmark Forum, to consulting for global giants like Hard Rock International Hotels and Warner Brothers. But at the heart of it all lies a simple yet profound truth: the power of authentic communication and living your purpose. Today, I'll share insights gleaned from a lifetime of experience and learning. We'll explore how to enroll and inspire others, not by coercion, but through authenticity, heart, and presence. It's about sharing your passion so compellingly that others can't help but be drawn to your vision. I've been fortunate to learn from some of the greatest minds of our time, like Buckminster Fuller and Swami Muktananda. Their teachings reinforced my belief in creating circumstances and harnessing the power within to achieve desired outcomes. We'll also delve into dealing with challenges and failures. I've learned to view these as gifts, opportunities for growth and learning. This mindset has been crucial in both my personal and professional life. Moreover, I'll discuss the importance of feedback and honest communication in building successful relationships, both in personal life and within corporations. Understanding how we show up for others is key to creating impactful collaborations. Lastly, I'm excited to introduce you to the Marcia Martin Membership Club, a digital platform offering a wealth of resources for personal growth and development right at your fingertips. So whether you're a leader, an aspiring speaker, or someone passionate about personal development, this episode is for you. Join me as we explore the nuances of talking about success and how to harness your inner power to make a meaningful impact in the world. Let's get started.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talking About Success. I'm your host, Jack Canfield, and I am excited today. I have an amazing guest, Marcia Martin, and I want to take a few minutes longer than I normally do to properly introduce her because Marcia has an interesting and extensive background in the field of developing human potential. She is a renowned global speaker, an executive life coach, and CEO of Marcia Martin Productions, an executive training firm that consults Fortune 1000 companies and entrepreneurial organizations in leadership and championship performance. And she's personally trained, get this, more than 300,000 people all across the globe to have more effective relationship skills, communication mastery, public speaking competency, and simply to be a more effective human being. And her corporate clients have included Hard Rock International Hotels, Warner Brothers, McCain Foods, Dannon Yogurt, Evian Water, Capital One, and the Intercontinental Hotels. And as an original pioneer of the human potential movement, she was senior vice president and the original founding member, along with Werner Erhard of EST Seminar Trainings. Erhard Seminar Trainings, you probably all heard of EST, now known as the Landmark Forum, where she was instrumental from 1970 until 1980 in taking that company from inception to a worldwide graduate base of millions of people. And as a global businesswoman, she was the senior partner of Suru Incorporated, an international manufacturing and merchandising fashion jewelry company with offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Beijing, and Hong Kong, where she took the company from inception to $5 million in annual sales in a period of just 3 years. And if we're lucky, I can get her to tell you a story about what she did in one of those transactions over there, working with people in Asia. You know, in 2014, she became Dame Marcia when she was knighted by the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem for her global humanitarian efforts in addressing poverty, hunger, and youth at risk. And she's also worked very closely with me in the early 2000s as a guest trainer in many of my trainings. And she's helped me to co-found and lead the Transformational Leadership Council, better known as TLC in the United States. And she's the co-founder of the Network for Transformational Leaders in Europe. You'd think she had to be 408 years old by now to do all that, but she's not. Anyway, welcome to the show, Marcia. I'm really glad to have you as a guest.
I'm really, really thrilled to be here, Jack. You know how much I love you and I appreciate this and I'm honored. And actually, I do feel like I'm pretty old.
Well, you're young at heart, as we all are. Um, Now, you've accomplished so much in the field of personal development training. I'm curious how you got into this work of personal development training. What was your start?
I think my real start was when I was 12 because I read Atlas Shrugged and it changed my life. And I don't think I know any other 12-year-old that was like reading Atlas Shrugged, but I did. And I decided that I wanted to be a powerful woman, make a difference in the world. And then my aunt, I interned with her when I was a young girl. I was around 18 till I was about 20. And she was an esoteric astrologist and a healer and a shaman. And she taught me about energy and metaphysics and how to heal and how to meditate. And so I've been meditating ever since then and was able to discover an inner source of power within myself. And by the time I was 21, I happened into the first guest seminar that Werner Erhard, who was the founder of EST, ever led. And there were just a few of us. And so I enrolled in the first training he ever did. There were 20 of us in that first training. And
Wow.
I brought so many people then to the guest seminars that he made me his vice president and put me in charge of marketing and sales and promotion and production. And so for the next 10 years, I worked with him in building EST, which later, as you said, became Landmark Forum.
Now, you were 20 years old when you did that?
I think
Starting?
I was around 22, 21. Yeah.
21, 22.
Yeah.
What was it like being part of that? I mean, it was a worldwide organization. It just took off. Everyone wrote about it. It was in all the newspapers and magazines. If you hadn't done it, you weren't cool, etc. Here you were at the beginning of all that. What was that like for you?
It was amazing because in the beginning, there was only 20 of us. And we didn't do seminars in hotels or in trainings in big buildings. We were actually in Hanukkah Spitz, one of the other original founding members' apartment. And Werner would have the graduates sit on the floor in a circle in the living room, and we would bring guests. And then that's where he would lead the graduate seminars with us. And then the guests were asked to go into the bedroom. And then they would sit on the bed, and the guest seminar leader, which was me or Laurel or Hanukkah, would sit on the dresser and tell them about the training. And then we went from that original apartment, then we started doing small little hotel rooms, and then we started doing bigger hotel rooms, and pretty soon we were doing auditoriums. And Jack, what was really interesting when I look back is for the first 3 to 4 years during that time when I was leading guest seminars and training the trainers in sales and enrollment, people would ask me what transformation meant because our purpose was to transform your life so that the situations you've been putting up with or, in your way would clear up just in the process of life itself. And I would say that, and they would say, well, all these hands would go up. And they would say, well, what does transformation mean? And I remember asking Werner, what does transformation mean? And he said to me, and I was just a young thing, and it made sense to me. He said, oh, that's like when you go from a caterpillar to a butterfly. So for years, I would say, oh, that's like when you go from a caterpillar to a butterfly. And only a few years ago did I ever even discover what an incredibly dangerous process that is and how transformational it is that the caterpillar actually dissolves into a soup and reconstitutes itself into a new organism. But back then, I just thought it was kind of like, well, that's what happens. But it was amazing. Nobody knew what it meant. Now it's a buzzword that we all do.
But I think everybody intuitively got it when you use that metaphor. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I've always thought of you as the queen of enrollment. And here you were enrolling all these people in something that was totally new, that no one understood, that no one was allowed to really talk about what happened in there and so forth, just be the result and so forth. What was that? Just share with us just a couple of, because I know a lot of people out there, one of the biggest challenges for people watching are, how do you enroll people in your program, in your podcast, in your training thing, in your class, whatever it would be. Can you share just this? I know you could do a whole 3-day seminar on that, but could you share what are some core essential thoughts about enrolling and engaging and sales and all that, getting people to play?
Well, for sure, I have lots of courses on sales and enrollment and leadership, as you know, and people can find out about them at marciamartin.com. But back then, and I think the core and really how and why I was so successful is I was authentic and I came from my heart and I really cared for people and I was present. And
Mm.
what was really funny is I was in love, Jack, with the world. You know me. You and I have known each other for almost 40 years now. And you know how much I care for people. And I really deeply love human beings. And, when I first started enrolling people in S, it worked like this. I would get on a bus and the bus driver would say, "What's going on with you? You're so happy." And I would say, "Oh, you have to do this training. It's amazing." And he would end up coming to the guest seminar. And I remember one night, Werner went around the room and said, "How did you come?" And one woman said, "Well, I came with Marcia." "Well, how did you meet Marcia?" "Well, I was in the restaurant bathroom and Marcia came in and I told her I had a headache and she helped me get rid of my headache. And she was so full of life. I just had to have whatever she had." And then the bus driver said, "Well, I was driving a bus and she got on my bus and I wanted to have whatever she wanted, whatever she had also." So I think that the real core of enrollment is that when you're in touch with your authentic self and your true expression of your passion about something, and you share it, not to tell someone what they should do, but what you got. So I don't say you have to do this and this is what you'll get. I always say, here's what I got.
Hmm.
Here's why I took it. And that experience allows people to be inspired rather than pressured. And I think that that's a core condition of being able to enroll people.
You remind me of a story by Ram Dass, the great spiritual teacher, who said once he was in India and one of his students had gone home to Washington and sent him a letter, said, "Every time I talk about Buddhism, my parents hate me. Every time I act like the Buddha, they love me." And
Yes.
so it's like it's like not about telling people what they should do, but just being so much the result that everyone else wants to play along. That's way cool. Now, you had a lot of other mentors besides Werner Erhard in your life, some of the most amazing people on the planet. Can you talk about a few of those?
I feel so fortunate. My life has been so unique. And because so many people did the S training, I was able to meet some great leaders from all over the world. I was personally mentored by Buckminster Fuller, a genius, total thinker, kind of the Einstein of our time while he was here on Earth. And I got to travel with him all around the United States because we presented him in events that I was filling for all of the S graduates. And so many times I got to introduce him and I got to travel with him and I mentored. I felt like I was just sitting at his knee and he would tell me how the world works. And then, of course, Jerry Weintraub, I met when I was a very young girl, one of the greatest producers and creative people of all time in Hollywood. And so I learned how to make movies and how to share a story and how
Mm.
to bring something to life that is one of your life adventures that you can share with others so that they can get value from. And I also was mentored by Buckminster, or not Buckminster Fuller, I already talked about him, but by Swami Muktananda, who is a global spiritual leader, and by Warren Bennis, one of the greatest business management leaders and scholars of all time, and Peter Drucker, a
Yeah.
great, great leader of business. So I've had some of the best in the world, Jack.
Well, Peter's one of my heroes. I read when he was, I forget how old he was, I think like 80, 90, somewhere in there. He wrote like 3 books, 28 articles, gave 50 speeches. It was like, okay, this is how I want to aspire to be in my life. Exactly. Share a couple of things you learned from each of those people. You mentioned Bucky and what you mentioned, Jerry, you learned about movies and storytelling and all that. How about some of the other lessons you learned from these great teachers?
I think one of the greatest lessons I learned from each of the great people that mentored me was that you can create your own circumstances, that you have a power within you. And that if you go within to find your answers and you actually access and harness that power that connects you to everything that is of life in the world, that really is of a higher nature or a higher source, kind of like may the force be with you, that force is within us. And I think a lot of people think that their circumstances determine what they need to be committed to. That's the first thing that one says when you ask them, are you committed? They'll say, well, let me see if I have the right amount of money or the right team or the right this or the right that. They're looking outside of themselves to see if they have the circumstances so they can say, yes, I'll be committed. But what I found is when you are committed first, before you know how, before you have the circumstances, that you can utilize that inner power and actually create the circumstances that you need to make that difference or create that result.
Cool. I agree with that. That's very cool. Now, I saw an interesting quote from, I think it was Nelson Mandela. He said, I never lose. I either win or I learn something really important.
Oh, I love that.
I'm wondering, as you've gone through life, all these experiences, if you've had some losses, failures, setbacks, detours, and what you might have learned from those.
Very good. I think what I've learned is that it's a gift. And so I would agree with the great Mandela, that when you have an experience in front of you, that you need that experience to understand either what you need to do to change or what you need to do to strengthen or how you need to be, or even knowing what doesn't work, because knowing what doesn't work sometimes is a bigger lesson than knowing what works. And what I've learned to do is, and I've had many, many failures. I had a failed marriage. I'm divorced. I had a child, a stepson who committed suicide. So I felt that that was really a failure in my inability to connect with him in a way that he felt that he could be powerful in life. I've lost lots of money. I've had businesses that didn't work out. So I think the difference between when I go through a failure and maybe somebody else might go through a failure is because I learned from such a young age to go within, to observe, to be responsible, to take responsibility. Those weren't lessons that I learned later in life. I was a teenager. I was in my early 20s. And so it's the foundation of who I am. And I know that I can observe myself and actually take the lesson and know that I need really to have this lesson. So it's a gift rather than resist it. And as I experience it, then I become more powerful.
Very cool. Now, you may have already answered this, but Simon Sinek wrote a great book called Start With Why. And I love that book. And he basically says you have to know your why. Your why is what gets you through. It gives you a sense of purpose, sense of direction. It sustains you through, setbacks like we just talked about. How would you define your why, your deepest purpose?
My deepest purpose has always been to have people discover who they really are, to connect with that great being and power within themselves, and to be able to wake up and make a difference. And it's been a longing for me to connect. And I've always wanted people to see that they were connected. So that's been the reason I teach, the reason I give my seminars and workshops, the reason I consult corporations, is that there is this great power that human beings have. And I really feel deep down inside that we're all connected. And when we use our individual expression of that power that we're connected to, that we make this a better world. And that's what has always been important to me from the time that I read Atlas Shrugged.
12 years on. Sounds like a song. So in your introduction, I talked about all these corporations you've worked with. Many are brand names that everyone's familiar with. Tell me a story or give me an example or just talk about, you've worked with these companies. What do you see? You go in there and you do your work. Like, what happens? What are the results? What can people look forward to if they said, yeah, I want to know what Marcia does. Yeah, I would like to have that for my company. Tell us a little about what kind of results you produce when you work with a company.
Great. Lots of companies are siloed. So many times the departments will be at war with each other. They'll be separated. So sales doesn't like what the front desk does, or the front desk is, feeling they don't get enough money from finance. Or I work with a lot of hospitality and restaurants and hotel organizations. So that's what I mean by a front desk. But in any corporation, there are silos and people are disconnected. So that's one thing that opens up. People start being connected and collaborate and start to communicate with each other as if they're all in it together, not as if this department is better or worse than any other department. The other thing that happens is there's a sense of ownership and responsibility that begins to be awakened in the culture and within each of the individuals. And when that happens, and it doesn't take long, because, when you share the kinds of things that I teach people, how the mind works, how mindset happens, and what real mindsets can produce results, and, how people can work together and what leadership really is, when you start sharing that, people get it. And it takes place really quickly. And one of the things that gets eliminated is the blame game. Because when people start being responsible and they start collaborating and they start seeing that they're the owner of something and they can cause something and that they can contribute and they have an impact and they can influence, suddenly it's more important for them to focus on what needs to be done to make it work than who needs to be blamed for it not working. And that's an extraordinary thing. The other thing that really happens, and I know I'm going on, but it's such
No,
a
I
good
love it.
question.
I just had an Oprah moment. Whenever I've been on Oprah, she always, when someone says something really impactful, she goes, "Wait a second, let's say that again. I want people to really hear it." You just said, when they finally get that it's more important to focus on creating what works rather than figuring out who to blame for it not working or something. Could you repeat that sentence again? That was critical.
Well, I'm sure I won't repeat it exactly, but when people start getting in touch with and they focus on what they can do to influence and impact the thing working, then they take their attention off who they have to blame for it not working.
That's really so powerful. Anyway, you can keep going. I cut you off.
And another great thing that happens is people start to be honest with each other in a kind and respectful way and give feedback. So, see, most people take feedback personally. And that's a way that feedback, it can't be powerful if you think that somebody is telling you something about yourself. People can't tell you anything about yourself. You are who you are and you know more than they do, but they can tell you how you show up for them. They can tell you from your behaviors what their interpretation is of what that behavior meant and how it lands. So if you can take that in and consider that that's worthwhile information to find out, then you can make a decision and a choice about, do I want to keep this particular behavior pattern or not? And you can change how you show up in the world for other people. And people collaborate with who you are as an identity, not who you really are. An assessment creates the identity. So who you are for me is what I see, my interpretation from whatever actions you're taking. And that interpretation creates the identity of who you are. And then that's how you show up for me. If I think somebody's lazy, how they show up for me is lazy. Maybe they're not really lazy. Maybe I just interpreted something inaccurately. But the minute I make that assessment that that exists for me, that they are lazy, then that's their identity and who I collaborate with. I collaborate with identities. So it's important for people to know that. Well, people are afraid to tell people what they really think, especially if it's a negative assessment. We're willing to say, oh, yeah, you did that great. But when we see something isn't working or we don't like what happened, we don't want to, we say, hurt the person's feelings. But it's not really that we don't want to hurt their feelings. We're just cowards and we don't want to take the chance of somebody being upset with us. So we don't tell them what we really mean. Well, one of the things that happens in all the corporations and entrepreneurial companies that I go into and train their executives and their managers is that people learn how to make assessments of each other in a way that's powerful. And it just opens up so many possibilities because people start being honest with each other. So that's some of the things that happen.
That's very cool. I love that. That's great. When you think about all the things you're doing, what's your most exciting project right now? What are you working on? I'm assuming you are something interesting. What is it?
I am so excited. I have created I had this idea 2 years ago, way before COVID. So I think I'm ahead of the game. And I put together a platform, a website of my workshops, seminars, all my podcasts and my speaking engagements. And we've edited them, and it's kind of a la Netflix. It's kind of like a Marcia Martin Netflix, and we call it the Marcia Martin Membership Club. And it's only $10 a month, and literally it's changing people's lives. And I've got a couple hundred members right now, and we want to have at least 1,000 members by next quarter. And people can go on my membership club site. It's marciamartinclub.com, and they can register, and then they can watch in the convenience of their own home and at their own leisure any workshop or seminar that we've been able to upload. And we're continuing to upload many. We're editing them now. I've carried around, Jack, and you know this about me. I've always had this dream I'm going to write a book, and how I'm going to write it. I haven't even written a book yet. Can you believe it? That how I'm going to write it is I'm going to take all of these videos that I've had over many years of leading all of these thousands of seminars. I'm going to transcribe them, and then I'm going to edit them into a book. So one day, a couple years ago, I got this idea. Why don't I take those boxes and boxes of videos and edit them into like movies or clips like Netflix does? And so now you can go into my club, the Marcia Martin Membership Club, and pick a workshop that you want to see. And it's all broken down into modules, and we tell you what it's about and how long it is. And you can get your training in the convenience of your home. And it's working. It's fabulous. People are saying things like, "You saved my marriage." I mean, I'm thrilled. It's so good because I didn't know if it would work, because I know it works when you're in person with me and people are transformed all over the place. But I thought, well, if they watch kind of like a movie or a workshop, will it work? And it does. And people have been saying, "You are rewiring my brain." And the other people say, I go down the street now and I say, "What would Marcia say? What would Marcia do?" So that's my new project, and I'm thrilled about it. We're going to create a whole community, and we're going to have webinars and all sorts of things over the next year.
So you're going to have bracelets that go, there's a little WWMD?
Maybe. Why not?
That's very cool. That's very cool. So kind of heading toward the end of this, couple questions. If you had one message, if you could just snap your finger and everyone in the world would get one thing, they would know it or be it or do it, what would it be?
That we're all connected. I have to tell you a story. My dog Gallagher died in the hospital in surgery for his heart when he was 17 years old. He lived a long life, but it took 7 hours, and there were 19 doctors. And it was one of the saddest moments of my life because the nurse would run out of the hospital and she would say, "Oh no, his heart stopped." And our heart would stop. And then she'd come out a little bit later and say, "We started it up again." And we went up and down like that, literally for 7 hours before I think he was just so tired he gave up.
Wow.
And I took my other dog, Summer, who was with me, into that room where he was laying, passed away now, on a desk. And the doctor told me I had to bring Summer in to show her Gallagher was gone. And so she came up to Gallagher and she sniffed Gallagher, and then she looked at me. And then she sniffed him again and looked at me. And then she literally, Jack, went over to the side of the room in the corner and put her paws over her head and just laid down like that. And a week later, my friend and I had a memorial for Gallagher where we blessed his ashes. And we had his little box of ashes on the coffee table. And Tyson Young was there, as you know, Tyson, and he was with me at the time, and we were taking care of the animals, and we had pictures, and we were going to sing songs and all of this. And we took our hands together, and I said, well, let's start, thinking we'll start the service. And at that exact moment, from the other side of the house, in came single file my other animals, Summer the dog, and 3 cats. Single file, one in back of the other. The 2 black kitties, Simon and Cinco, jumped up on the coffee table and laid down like bookends next to the little box of Gallagher's ashes. Nipper, our white cat, jumped up on my lap and laid down, and Summer laid right down by the coffee table, just totally settled. And Tyson and I were like, woo, 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 woo. What happened? So we did this amazing memorial, and we sang songs, and we said prayers, and we told stories, and we lit candles. And it was really, really a beautiful 45 minutes or so. And then I remember saying, why don't we say the Lord's Prayer to end? And so we said the Lord's Prayer out loud. And the minute we said amen, like instantaneously, we said amen, all 4 animals stood up and left the room. It was a breathtaking. And for me, that was just a lesson in that we're all connected. You know, it doesn't matter if we're an animal or a rock or a waterfall or a tree or a human being or a star in the sky. There's something very spiritual about the energeticness of all of life. And I think that is the one thing that I would say is most important to me, to know that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I know you've mentioned it a few times, but if our listeners and viewers want to connect with you and your different offerings, your website, your club, and hiring you as a speaker or a trainer, where do they go?
They go to Marcia Martin, and it's MarciaMartin.com. And they can also go to MarciaMartinClub.com. And I would just like to say also, Jack, before we end, how thrilled I am and how much I love you that you would take the time to do this interview with me. You and I have known each other since 1977, when we had our first hamburger at the Hamburger Hamlet in Brentwood. And we talked for hours, and we've been like brother and sister ever since. And it's been one of the best things I ever did in my life, was to co-create the Transformational Leadership Council with you, and all of the great people we brought together, and all of the great adventures we've had. So I just want you to know you are in my heart, and I really, really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you being on the show. It'll be good viewing for everybody. They're going to learn about assessments and feedback and identities and all kinds of things that can help them. Maybe it'll save their marriage. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And all of you watching out there in television land, make sure you join us next week, where I'll have another fascinating guest to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay happy. Bye.
And God bless.
And God bless.
Thanks for listening to Talk This Way. If you enjoyed the episode, follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And for access to training, courses, and other ways to learn from Marcia, visit marciamartin.com. That's MARCIA.